And at Believers, we are committed to walking through the cultural tensions around race and being a community of faith that is both diverse and united. We're committed to that. For at least 8 years now, one of our highest goals has been to become a reconciling community, a place where we're not afraid to address the racial inequities of our culture, to speak into a cultural conversation that is tense and oftentimes full of anger, and try to bring the love of Jesus into that conversation, a conversation that often lacks the love of Jesus. And this letter to the church of Ephesians can instruct us on how to build a unified community of faith in a community that is exceptionally divided. And even if you're not a follower of Jesus, isn't that what you want? Don't you want racial tensions to be resolved? Don't you want our community to be one where everyone feels a part of it? Everyone is included. No one fears another group. Like, isn't that what we really want? No matter what your faith persuasion is. And here's what I think. I think for the last, 130 years or so, our nation has, tried to legislate racial harmony and bring about, equities, and it's not resolving the racial tension. And so maybe the solution to what we experience in our community is not a lack of law, but maybe it's something that's buried in some literature that's 2,000 years old, that we could pull from it and learn from it and do better by it. So in the verses that follow, we read that Paul used, there were some miraculous signs that accompanied his teachings. There were some people who were healed and so on. And in the early church, that often would happen, and it happened, it seems to be kind of like this validating thing, this authenticating thing of the apostles, that they had God's power on them or something like that. And so some people were healed, and as you might imagine, it caused the teachings of Jesus to kind of go viral in the city. And then we read in Acts 19, starting at verse 17, that the story of what happened, these miracles, spread quickly all throughout Ephesus to Jews and Greeks alike. And a solemn fear descended on the city. And the name of the Lord Jesus was greatly honored. And many who became believers, they confessed their sinful practices. And so the message of Jesus starts spreading through this city, and people are turning from sorcery and paganism, and they're coming to faith. And they're not just like going to church like once a month or something like that. Like, they're experiencing a radical change, and it is disrupting the life of everyone in the city. Imagine a movement of faith that is so incredibly powerful that it disrupts the normal rhythms of life in a community. That's pretty incredible. And just a couple verses later, we read this, and it's kind of lengthy, so I'll go through it as quickly as I can, but it's relevant. It says, about that time, serious trouble developed in Ephesus concerning the way. And so at the end of this, we're not going to get to it because it's a few verses after, but at the end of this, there is literally a riot in the city of Ephesus because so many people are upset about the teachings of the people coming to faith in Jesus. So serious trouble is starting to develop in Ephesus concerning the way. And it began with Demetrius. He was a silversmith who had a large business manufacturing silver shrines of the Greek goddess Artemis. And he kept many craftsmen busy. He called them together along with others employed in similar trades, and he addressed them as follows. So this is Artemis, the silversmith. He's a constructor of silver idols, and here's what he says to his fellow tradesmen. He says, "Gentlemen, you know that our wealth comes from this business of manufacturing idols. But as you've seen and heard, this man Paul has persuaded so many people that handmade gods aren't really gods at all. And he's done this not only here in Ephesus, but throughout the entire province, so we can't even export our work. And of course, I'm not just talking about the loss of public respect for our business. No. It's way more than just I'm losing some money here. I'm also very concerned that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will lose its influence, and that Artemis, this magnificent goddess worshipped throughout the province of Asia and all around the world, will be robbed of her great prestige. So you see, kind of what's going on here. It's not that hard to figure out. This guy, Demetrius, he's the head of the local 404 silversmith idol manufacturing union, right? And he's very upset that there's this disruption in town that's affecting his bottom line. And so he pulls all the tradesmen together to complain about what's happening. And then to sound pious, he's like, well, it's not just about the money, of course. We're very concerned about Artemis, our great goddess, and her dignity. And then he gets everybody so worked up that literally a riot breaks out. Paul, his life is very much at risk right now in the city of Ephesus. And this stuff that's going on in Ephesus relates to us today. We don't have a bunch of silver idols, all over town, and there's not a 404, silversmith idling manufacturers union and all that kind of stuff. But I've talked a lot about this over the last couple of years, the rise of the nuns, those who have no religious affiliation whatsoever. And the numbers of people, this just came out, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, that ever since it's been measured, there are more people today in the U.S. who are not connected to a place of worship than those who are connected to a place of worship. And I've read articles talking about the decline of Christianity in the U.S. and how we're quickly becoming a post-Christian nation. And I would argue we probably already are a post-Christian nation. And some people, they sit around and they wring their hands and they're so worried about all of this stuff out there that's coming against us as a church. And wokeism is going to be the end of the church. It's this terrible thing that's happening. Secularism is the big enemy. Humanism, agnosticism, atheism, all the isms out there. Oh no, what are we going to do? We're in so much trouble. The church, as we know, the glory days of the church are long behind us, and we don't know what to do because of all this opposition in our culture. And so we huddle up together and we bemoan all the stuff that's going on. But let me remind you, the church has persevered way longer than anything that has opposed it. Artemis and the temple dedicated to her was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The auditorium is said to have held some 25,000 people. Today, there is a single pillar left of the temple of Artemis, and it sits in a city of just complete ruins. The Roman Colosseum, it was a place where Christians were thrown to the lions, and the cross was a symbol of Roman power, authority, and cruelty. And think about this. Today, in that same city, the city of Rome, a city that was the seat of everything that was opposed to Christianity, it is today home of what some would consider to be the home of Christianity. St. Peter's Basilica is there and visited by more people than even the Roman Colosseum is. And the cross is no longer a symbol of the power of Rome or the cruelty of Rome. Instead, the cross is a symbol of nothing other than the grace and love of Jesus. Now you think about that. The things that have opposed the church through history, that have become artifacts of history. There's nothing out there that has the power to undo the church. Not the institution, the gathering of people who follow Jesus. And we have this promise for us. It's not just, I'm not just trying to encourage you. I'm telling you, this is promised to us. Jesus himself said this in Matthew 16:18. I will build my church. And you know this, if you've attended here for any amount of time, that word church there is not a building and it's not a location. It is the word ecclesia, and it means my assembly, my gathering. I will build my people is what Jesus is saying. And all the powers of hell will not conquer it. There's no amount of social upheaval that is going on out there that has the potential to undo what God is doing right here in this assembly. There's nothing. And here's why. And this brings us to the first chapter of the book of Ephesians. Paul articulates why this is true. And here's what he said to the church at Ephesus. And it applies to us today too. Paul said, I pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us. And I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. That's very important. He wants you to understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe in him. It's the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honor at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. And now, he is far above any ruler or any authority or any power or any leader or anything else, not only in this world, but also in the world to come. See, I think we way underestimate what God wants to do and what God can do. We way underestimate the power of God. And what Paul says next is so incredibly important. He talks about this power that raised Christ from the dead that is available to us, and he explains what it's for. And there's a catch. This power that is available to us comes with a caveat. Here's what Paul said. God has put all things under the authority of Christ, and he has made him head over all things for the benefit of the church. The benefit of the ecclesia. The benefit of the assembly, the gathering. And the church is his body. And it is made full and complete by Christ, who fills all things everywhere with himself. See, this power that is available for us, that Paul is praying that the church at Ephesus and that we here at Believers would comprehend and understand, is the power to embolden and benefit the church. And while the church is not the building, you are the church. You are not the church by yourself. You're not. The power of God is available and for the purpose of the church, the assembly. So the people who are following Jesus but are cut off, isolated from the assembly itself, that power is not for the singular, it is for the collective us. They're missing out on the purpose and the power of God. So like you read about the start of this church, and it's pretty incredible. Like there's this miraculous stuff that's going on. There's all of this opposition that's pushing against the church. There's riots in the city because so many people are coming to faith. There's miraculous power. The power that raised Jesus from the dead. There's all of this stuff going on. And in the midst of all of that societal chaos, this vibrant church is born. It's pretty incredible.